October 23rd, 1944, Norfolk Air Station, Virginia. Hauptmann Anna Richter stood before a B-24 Liberator, her engineering mind cataloging every rivet, every panel, every impossibility made manifest in American steel. The bomber gleamed under the hangar lights, fresh paint still drying on its aluminum skin. An American sergeant sleeves rolled to his elbows, stepped forward and slapped the fuselage with the casual affection of a man patting a loyal dog. 3 days, ma'am. We can replace this in 3 days if it's shot down. The words landed like artillery fire. Anna's knees buckled. Not from hunger, though she had been hungry. Not from exhaustion, though she had been awake for 30 hours. Her legs gave way because in that moment, standing in the control chaos of an American aircraft hangar, she understood with crystalline certainty that Germany had lost the war before it began. 3 days. It took the Reich 3 months to build a single Messerschmitt, scrounging parts from bombed factories, rationing aluminum like gold training pilots, faster than they could replace the ones bleeding out over France. And here, in this single hangar, in this single American city, they spoke of replacing strategic bombers the way a housewife spoke of replacing a broken dish. Anna Richter was 28 years old. She had graduated top of her class in electrical engineering from Technical University Berlin. She had decoded British radio transmissions at Bletchley intercept stations. She had watched her brother Wilhelm climb into his fighter cockpit for the last time in June, his face gaunt from poor rations, his hands trembling from exhaustion, still believing the lies they had all been fed. Still believing Germany would win because will mattered more than steel, because spirit could triumph over production, because the Fuhrer had promised them weapons that would change everything. Wilhelm never came back from that mission over Normandy. The Americans shot him down with overwhelming numbers. Mustangs for every Messerschmitt, paves of them rolling off assembly lines fast enough to fill the sky. And now Anna stood in the belly of that beast, watching the future devour the past, watching American workers assemble aircraft with the bored efficiency of men on a factory floor making automobiles. No desperation, no frantic energy, just methodical, relentless, impossible productivity. If you or your family served in the military during this time, if your father or grandfather encountered German prisoners of war, share your story in the comments. What you are about to hear may explain why so many former German POWs became some of America's closest friends after the war ended. But first, to understand the shock that Anna Richter experienced, we need to go back 28 days to the moment she first set foot on American soil. To the morning everything she believed began to crumble. The SS Bremen had been at sea for 11 days, carving a slow path across the Atlantic from Southampton to Norfolk. In the hold, 47 German women huddled against the cold, nursing the wounds of capture, clinging to the certainty that they were bound for a nation too soft, too lazy, too divided to wage real war. Anna kept a diary, writing in cramped script with a pencil stub she had hidden in her boot during the surrender. The entries from those 11 days read like the journal of a woman watching the world from underwater. Everything muffled and strange, and soon to surface into harsh light. October 3rd, the food they give us is better than what our own soldiers received at the front. How is this possible? October 7th. Margaret says I should prepare myself for what we will see. She worked the Eastern Front. She knows what propaganda looks like. I told her to keep her defeatist talk to herself. But tonight, I cannot sleep. October 11th, tomorrow we arrive. The other women pray we will be treated according to Geneva Convention. I do not pray. I calculate. If America has the resources to feed prisoners well, what resources do they have for war? Margaret Fisher was 34, a surgical nurse who had survived Stalingrad, who had watched German soldiers freeze and starve in the Russian winter, while officers screamed about will and destiny and ultimate victory. She sat beside Anna on the crossing, her face carved into premature age by things she would never speak about, and she alone seemed unsurprised by the abundance. You still believe what they told us about America? Yes. Margaret's voice carried the hollow quality of someone who had stopped believing in anything. Anna clutched her thin coat tighter. I have seen the intelligence reports. American soldiers are poorly trained. Their equipment is mass-produced and inferior. They have no stomach for sacrifice. Margaret turned to look at her, and in the older woman's eyes, Anna saw something that frightened her more than capture. Pity. I worked in a field hospital at Stalingrad, Anna. I saw what our leaders called acceptable losses. I saw men die because we had no morphine, no antibiotics, no bandages. The Russians kept fighting because they had more men than we had bullets. She paused, her breath fogging in the cold hold. You think America is soft because they value comfort. I think we are going to learn a different definition of strength. That conversation haunted Anna through the final night at sea. She lay in her bunk listening to the other women whisper prayers and curses in the darkness, listening to the ocean slap against steel, wondering what waited for them beyond the dawn. She would find out soon enough. October 12th, 1944, 6:30 in the morning. The SS Bremen eased into Norfolk Naval Base like a whale surfacing in a forest of steel. Anna climbed onto the deck with the others blinking against the sunrise and stopped breathing. The harbor stretched to the horizon, so crowded with vessels, it looked like a man could walk from shore to shore on decks alone. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, supply ships, their hulls fresh with paint, their crews moving with the efficient choreography of men who knew their work mattered. Behind them rose the scaffolding of ships still being born, skeletal frames that would be flesh and function within days, not months. But it was not the ships that broke something inside Anna Richter's that morning. It was the sound. The harbor sang with industry. Pneumatic hammers rattled like machine gun fire, 200 strikes per minute, the rhythm of it almost musical in its relentlessness. Cranes groaned under impossible loads, swinging cargo containers the size of houses through the air with balletic precision. Diesel engines coughed black smoke, and underneath it all ran the deeper bass note of welding torches, thousands of them, metal screaming as it was forced into new shapes. The smell hit next, oil and tar and hot steel, the acrid bite of industry working at capacity overlaid with the sharp salt wind off the Atlantic. It was overwhelming, that smell. In Germany, factories smelled like desperation, like corners being cut and materials being stretched and workers being pushed past breaking. Here the smell was abundant, wasteful, even the smell of a nation that could afford to pour resources into war without counting every rivet. Anna tried to count the ships being built simultaneously. She lost track at 14. Her training as an engineer made the calculation automatic. If Norfolk alone could build 14 ships at once, and if similar yards existed up and down the coast, the numbers became absurd. Germany's entire maritime construction capacity could not match a single American port. Das ist unmöglich, she whispered. It is not possible. Beside her, Elizabeth Weber, 25 years old and one of the finest radio operators the Luftwaffe had trained, did her own counting. Her lips moved silently, tallying vessels, and when she finished, her face had gone the color of ash. 14 ships in construction here. Hamburg can build 3 simultaneously. If they have 18 yards on the East Coast alone, she did not finish the calculation. She did not need to. They all understood mathematics, these technical women who had believed their expertise would help win the war. The numbers were screaming at them now, louder than the hammers, louder than the cranes. Only Frieda Hoffmann refused to see. 31 years old daughter of a Gauleiter, true believer in the Reich's destiny, she stood rigid as iron and spat her denial into the morning air. This is theater. They brought us here to intimidate us. They arranged all of this just for show. But even as Frieda spoke, a Liberty ship 2 berths over began its launch, and the cheering of 40,000 workers rose above the industrial symphony. The vessel slid into the water with ponderous grace, ready for war. 4 days after its keel was laid, and Anna watched the American flag catch the wind and felt something inside her chest crack like ice in spring. She pulled out her diary, hands shaking, and wrote, "If this is real, then we never had a chance from the beginning." Lieutenant James O'Brien was waiting at the gangplank, 30 years old, third-generation Irish-American, his accent still carrying the music of Boston. He had kind eyes and grease under his fingernails and the confident posture of a man who knew his nation was winning. "Welcome to Norfolk, ladies." He gestured to the Liberty ship still settling into the water. "See that, launched 4 days ago. Not if the U-boats sink her, we will have another one in the water by next week." The women stared at him in silence. 47 prisoners, 47 sets of eyes trying to reconcile propaganda with reality, trying to understand how a soft nation produced hard steel faster than they could destroy it. O'Brien smiled, not unkindly. "Ma'am," he said, looking at Elizabeth, who had gone pale as paper, "this is just 1 yard. We have got 18 more on the East Coast alone. You are good at mathematics." Yes, you do the numbers. Elizabeth did the numbers. Her lips moved silently. 18 yards, one ship every 4 days per yard, roughly 160 ships per month just from Atlantic construction. Germany's U-boats were sinking perhaps 20 vessels monthly, on a good month losing submarines faster than they could replace them in the attempt. The arithmetic was brutal and clear. America was building 8 times faster than Germany could destroy. The gap was not closing. It was accelerating. Anna wrote in her diary that night, "We are trying to shoot down their production faster than they can build, but they build 8 times faster than we can shoot. This is not war. This is mathematics. And we have already lost the equation." The buses arrived to transport them inland. Olive drab windows streaked with salt. They rumbled up to the dock with a sound that Anna would remember forever, the deep diesel growl of American engines, running on fuel so abundant it might as well have been water. In Germany, doctors rode bicycles to hospitals because there was no gasoline for ambulances. Here, prisoners rode in comfort while the nation fought a global war. O'Brien helped them board with the courtesy of a man escorting guests, not prisoners. Inside the seats had cushions. The shock of that small luxury was almost as profound as the ship's. Anna sank into synthetic padding and felt her body relax against her will muscles, unknotting after months of wooden benches and concrete floors, and the ground itself when nothing else was available. The convoy rolled out of Norfolk just after noon, 2 buses escorted by a pair of jeeps, and the landscape that unrolled beyond the windows was a kind of violence against everything Anna had been taught to believe. The road was smooth, not perfect, but intact, unbroken by bomb craters, maintained by a nation that could afford to think about infrastructure while fighting on 2 continents. Telephone poles marched in orderly lines beside the highway wires, humming with communication connecting a country that sprawled across a continent. In Germany, Allied bombers had turned the telephone network into twisted scrap. Here the poles stood straight and proud and functional, but it was the trucks that made Anna want to weep. They passed a military depot where hundreds of GMC trucks sat in perfect rows fresh from the factory, canvas covers, tight and new. Each one representing mobility logistics, the ability to move men and material faster than the enemy could respond. Anna counted them automatically, her engineer's mind unable to stop cataloging. 300 trucks in one depot. The entire Wehrmacht in France had fewer vehicles than that, and half of those were running on fumes and prayers and parts cannibalized from dead machines. "A woman is driving that truck," Elizabeth said, suddenly pressing her face to the window. Anna looked. It was true. A young American woman in coveralls, maybe 20 years old, hauling a load of supplies with the easy confidence of someone who had been doing it for months. In Germany, women worked in factories because all the men were dead or dying. Here they worked because the nation needed production, and production meant everyone. The sensory details accumulated like evidence in a trial. The smell of gasoline, sharp and sweet fumes that in Germany would have been hoarded like liquid gold, but here drifted freely from idling engines. The sound of radios playing music, American jazz leaking from the depot guardhouse. The kind of frivolity that seemed obscene to women who had grown used to air raid sirens and silence. The sight of children playing baseball in a field beside the road, their laughter carrying through the bus windows, their bodies healthy and well-fed and innocent of the hunger that gnawed at German children like a patient wolf. "This cannot be the same war," Margaret said quietly. "This cannot be the same world." Frida turned on her eyes blazing. "They want you to think that. They bring us on a special route, show us their best hide, their weakness. Do not be deceived by this theater." But Anna was watching in the highway, watching the endless flow of military traffic, heading both directions, watching supply chains function with the smooth efficiency of a well-oiled machine. This was not theater. Theater required an audience, and the Americans were not performing for prisoners. They were simply living their war, and their war looked nothing like Germany's. The bus stopped at a roadside diner outside Newport News. A break for the guards, a chance to stretch legs, and O'Brien came back with paper bags full of food. One for each prisoner. Anna opened hers with trembling hands. Inside a hamburger still warm, wrapped in wax paper. A bottle of Coca-Cola, cold and sweating condensation. A small bag of potato chips, crispy and salted. The hamburger was substantial, a quarter pound of beef on a soft white bun, lettuce and tomato, and a slice of cheese melting into the meat. Anna held it in both hands and stared at it like an artifact from another civilization. In Germany, this much beef would feed a family for a week. Here it was roadside food, casual abundance, the kind of meal you bow out without thinking. She took a bite. The meat was rich and fatty and perfectly seasoned, and tears started rolling down her face before she could stop them. Not because it was delicious, though it was. Not because she was hungry, though she had been hungry for longer than she cared to remember. She cried because this was prisoner food. This casual abundance was what America fed to its enemies while transporting them to camps. And if this was how they treated prisoners, what did they give their soldiers? What did they give their children? Across from her, Margaret bit into her hamburger and also began to cry, silent tears tracking through the dust on her face. They did not speak. What was there to say that they had been lied to? That their brothers and sons and husbands had died for lies? That every speech about German superiority and American weakness had been propaganda designed to keep them fighting a war that mathematics had already decided? Anna looked out the diner window and saw an American boy, maybe 10 years old, drinking a Coke and playing with a dog. The boy was chubby, healthy, his clothes clean and new, his face unmarked by hardship. She thought of her sister Liesel, 19 years old and skeletal from years of rationing, her childhood stolen by a war machine that consumed its own children. Their children are fat, Anna wrote in her diary that night. Our children starve. When did we lose? In 1939 and 1933, or the moment we believed the lies? She ran to the bathroom and locked herself in a stall and sobbed until her ribs ached, until the tears stopped coming, until she could breathe again without the weight of understanding crushing her chest. When she emerged, face washed, eyes red, Margaret was waiting outside. It gets worse, the older woman said softly. Before it gets better, it gets much worse. Anna did not ask what she meant. She would find out soon enough that evening when the buses arrived at the POW camp and she discovered that America's cruelty was not violence or deprivation. It was kindness. It was dignity. It was the unbearable weight of being treated as human by people you had been taught to see as less than human, and having that treatment reveal how far your own nation had fallen into darkness. The buses turned off the main highway just as the sun began to set, gravel crunching under tires, and through the windows Anna could see the camp rising from the Virginia countryside. Barbed wire perimeter, guard towers, rows of wooden barracks stretching into the distance. She steeled herself for squalor, for overcrowding, for the casual brutality she had seen in German camps, housing Russian prisoners, men left to freeze in open fields, denied even the mercy of a quick death. But when the gates swung open and the buses rolled through, Anna Richter saw something that broke her more thoroughly than any cruelty could have managed. The barracks were clean, new construction, pine boards still weeping sap roofs tarred against weather. Smoke curled from chimneys, the smell of burning wood, and something else, something impossible. Bread. Fresh bread, baking, the scent of it, drifting across the compound like a message from a world that still had flour to spare. Beyond the barracks stretched small gardens, winter vegetables growing in neat rows, a recreation field with equipment for sports. Buildings marked medical and library and chapel, as if prisoners deserved health and knowledge in God. The bus stopped. The door hissed open. Anna stepped down onto American soil for the first time and felt the earth solid beneath her boots and wondered why it did not open up and swallow her whole for the sin of believing in a cause that would never have built something like this. Inside the processing center, they were cataloged like human beings instead of cargo. Name, rank, service, number, photograph. Each woman was issued fresh bedding, sheets that smelled of soap, wool blankets, thick and warm, towels, actual towels, not rags. A Navy doctor named Elizabeth Crawford examined them one by one, her touch professional and gentle, her face sad when she noted the malnutrition that marked them all like a brand. You have been living on 1,200 calories a day, maybe less, she told Anna through an interpreter. Our men get twice that even in the field. Anna stared at the doctor, unable to process the information. Prisoners eating more than soldiers. The equation refused to balance. Dr. Crawford made notes in her chart. We will get you healthy again. Geneva Convention requires it. But also because she paused, looked Anna in the eye, because you are a human being, and human beings deserve to be treated with dignity. Even in war. Especially in war. That evening, they were led to the mess hall for dinner. Anna walked through the door and stopped so suddenly that Margaret nearly collided with her from behind. The smell hit first, overwhelming and impossible. Meat cooking. Real meat, not the ersatz protein they had learned to stomach in Germany. Chicken frying in oil, the scent of it so rich it made her stomach clench with longing. On the serving line, fried chicken golden and crispy, mashed potatoes swimming in gravy, green beans cooked with bacon. White bread, not the dense black loaves of ration grain, but actual white bread, soft and yielding. Butter in small pats. Apple pie for dessert, still warm. Coffee, real coffee, not the chicory substitute they had drunk until they forgot what real coffee tasted like. Anna stood with a tray in her hands staring at the food and could not move. This was more than she had eaten in a week in Germany. This was abundance beyond reason, waste beyond comprehension. This was how America treated its prisoners. She sat down, picked up a piece of chicken. The breading crunched between her teeth. The meat was tender and juicy and seasoned with spices she had forgotten existed. She ate one bite and then set down the chicken very carefully because her hands had started shaking so hard she was afraid she would drop it. Across from her, Elizabeth was crying silently into her mashed potatoes. Next to her, another woman, whose name Anna did not know, had laid her forehead on the table and was sobbing. Margaret ate methodically, chewing each bite with the discipline of someone who had learned to take nourishment where it came, but her eyes were wet, and when she swallowed, it looked painful, as though the food was shame going down. Only Frida sat rigid, refusing to eat, glaring at them all, with the fury of someone watching a temple desecrate itself. "This is poison," she hissed. "They feed us like this to make us forget our duty. We are warriors of the Reich." Looked at her, looked at this woman who would rather starve than accept kindness from the enemy, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not anger, pity. Frida was a prisoner of war twice over, once to America and again to the lies that had brought them all to this place. That night, lying in a bed with actual sheets and an actual pillow, Anna opened her diary and wrote by the light of a reading lamp. They had been given another impossible luxury. They give prisoners sheets and pillows in reading lamps. They feed us better than our soldiers ate at the front. Wilhelm died hungry, fighting for a nation that could not even feed its own warriors. And I, his sister, a prisoner of the enemy, sleep warm and eat well, and am treated with more dignity than our own government ever showed us. What does this make us? What does this make them? I came here believing Germany was strong and America was weak. I am learning that strength is not what I thought it was. Strength is not cruelty. It is not deprivation. It is not sacrifice for sacrifice's sake. Strength is having so much that you can afford to be kind. Strength is being so confident in victory that you do not need to hate. Strength is building faster than your enemy can destroy, producing more than they can consume, and doing it all while your children stay fat and your prisoners stay fed. I do not know what this war is anymore, but I know what I saw today. I know what I ate. I know how I was treated. And I know that everything we were told was a lie. The lights in the barracks went out at 10. In the darkness, Anna lay awake, listening to the soft sounds of women breathing, some crying quietly, some already asleep from sheer exhaustion. Tomorrow they would wake to another impossible day. More food, more kindness, more evidence that they had fought for the wrong side of history. But tonight, Anna Richter closed her eyes and let herself feel the warmth of the blanket and the softness of the pillow and the terrible liberating weight of truth settling into her bones. The war was not over. But for Anna, the battle between belief and reality had just been decided. The morning routine began with a bugle call, sharp and clean against the autumn air. Anna woke disoriented, forgetting for a moment where she was expecting the damp cold of a German barracks or the rolling pitch of the ship. Instead, she found herself warm, covered in wool, lying in a bed that did not hurt her bones. The other women stirred slowly, emerging from sleep, like people surfacing from deep water. Some looked relieved, others looked guilty, as if comfort itself was a kind of betrayal. Frida was already awake, sitting rigid on her bunk, her face set in lines of righteous anger. After roll call, they were led to breakfast. Anna braced herself, thinking surely yesterday had been an aberration, a special meal to soften them up before the real deprivation began. But the mess hall offered the same impossible abundance. Scrambled eggs, fluffy and yellow with real butter. Bacon, crispy strips of it, the fat rendering into pools of flavor. Toast from white bread. Orange juice, the kind of vitamin-rich luxury that German civilians had not seen in years. Coffee that actually smelled like coffee. Anna sat down with her tray and stared at the bacon. In Germany, this much pork would be a feast day meal, something saved for Christmas if Christmas came at all. Here it was, Tuesday breakfast for prisoners of war. Elizabeth sat beside her, already eating with the focused intensity of someone making up for years of hunger. Between bites, she said, "They are going to kill us with kindness. This is more effective than any torture. How do you fight people who feed you better than your own side ever did?" "You do not fight them," Margaret said quietly from across the table. "You accept that you picked the wrong side. You make peace with it. You survive." Frida slammed her hand on the table hard enough to make the trays jump. "Is that what we are doing, Brian? We are officers of the Reich. We should be resisting, not collaborating." "We are eating breakfast," Margaret said, her voice tired. "If that is collaboration, then I am guilty. Court-martial me." The tension between them crackled like static electricity. Anna could feel the camp dividing, already fracturing along the fault line between those who could accept the truth and those who would die before they did. She ate her bacon slowly, each bite a small act of surrender, and thought about Wilhelm dying hungry in the cockpit of a Messerschmitt, while America trained replacement pilots faster than Germany could shoot them down. After breakfast, a guard approached their table. His name tag read Foster. He was maybe 38 with kind eyes and the weathered face of someone who had seen enough war to be tired of it. "Miss Weber, you are the radio operator." "Yes. We need someone to help translate some technical documents. Geneva Convention says we cannot force you, but we can pay you for the work. 50 cents an hour." Elizabeth looked at Frida, then at Anna, then back at Foster. "What kind of documents? Just instruction manuals, radio equipment, nothing classified." He shrugged. "Honestly, we just need someone who speaks both languages and understands the technical terms. Thought you might appreciate something to do besides sit around." Elizabeth agreed. Anna watched her go, wondering what it meant that the enemy was offering them work, paying them for it, treating them like skilled labor instead of captured assets. In German camps, Russian prisoners worked until they dropped dead. Here, Americans asked politely and offered wages. The rest of the morning passed in a strange, suspended reality. Some women read books from the library. Others walked the perimeter, testing the boundaries of their confinement. Anna found herself drawn to a bulletin board near the main administrative building where newspapers were posted for the guards. She stood reading headlines in English, her technical training giving her enough vocabulary to parse the meaning. The Allies had liberated Paris. Soviet forces were pushing through Poland. American production had hit new records. Every headline was another nail in the coffin of German victory. A voice behind her said, "You read English well." Anna turned. Captain Robert Hayes stood there, 35 years old, Army intelligence, his uniform crisp despite the Virginia heat. His face was intelligent and watchful, the face of a man whose job was understanding people. "I studied it in university," Anna said carefully. "Before the war. Before the lies, you mean?" Hayes stepped beside her, looking at the newspaper. His voice was not unkind. "You are Anna Richter, engineer, signals intelligence. Your brother was Luftwaffe." Anna felt her chest tighten. "Was. Past tense. Yes, I am sorry for your loss." Hayes paused. "The war has taken too many brothers, on all sides." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Hayes said, "I am going to be honest with you, Miss Richter. We did not bring you here just to sit in a camp for the duration. We brought you here to see, to understand. Because we think some of you are smart enough to recognize the truth when it is put in front of you." What truth, Anna asked, though she already knew? That this war is over. Germany has already lost. The only question is how many more people die before your leaders accept it. Hayes looked at her directly. "You are an engineer. You understand production capacity. You have seen Norfolk. You can do the mathematics." Anna said nothing. The mathematics were screaming in her head, had been screaming since she stepped off the boat. But saying it out loud felt like treason, felt like spitting on Wilhelm's grave. "We are going to show you more," Hayes continued. "Aircraft factories, communications networks. The full scope of American industrial capacity. And when you have seen it all, we are going to ask you to write a report, a truthful assessment of what you observed. We will send it through channels to German officers who might listen, who might be looking for a reason to end this before more cities burn." "You want me to be a traitor," Anna said flatly. "I want you to save lives." Hayes' voice was quiet but firm. Every day this war continues, thousands die. German soldiers, American soldiers, Russian soldiers, civilians in cities being bombed into rubble. If your report helps convince even one German general to surrender his sector early, how many lives is that worth? Anna looked at him. This enemy officer who spoke of saving German lives and felt the world tilt sideways. My family, she said, if I do this and anyone finds out, they will be killed. We will protect your identity. The report will be attributed to a German technical officer. No names. Hayes paused. And Miss Richter, we just received word from Red Cross about your family, your mother and sister. They survived the Munich bombing. They evacuated to a village in Bavaria before it hit. The relief hit Anna like a physical blow. She had to grip the bulletin board to stay standing. They are alive, yes, but they are starving. Winter is coming and they have no heat, no food. The German government is putting everything into the military. Civilians are on their own. Hayes let that sink in. If this war ends 1 month earlier because of information you provide, that is 1 more month your mother and sister might survive. Anna felt tears burning behind her eyes. She blinked them back. I need time to think. Take the time you need. But while you think, we are going to show you what you are up against. He gestured toward the motor pool where buses were being prepared. This afternoon, we are taking a group to Norfolk Air Station. You are invited. See what American air power really looks like. Then decide if you want to help end this. The bus ride back to Norfolk felt different this time. Anna was not numb with shock anymore. She was alert, analytical, her engineering mind fully engaged, cataloging everything like evidence in a case she was building against her own beliefs. They passed more truck convoys, more supply depots, more evidence of logistics functioning at a scale that made German efforts look like amateur hour. But it was the small details that accumulated into understanding. A woman driving a delivery truck casual as breathing, children playing in a park, their bodies healthy and whole, gas stations with cars lined up, not because fuel was scarce, but because people could afford to drive for pleasure. This is not a nation at war, Elizabeth said beside her. This is a nation that happens to be fighting a war. There is a difference, Anna nodded. In Germany, the war consumed everything. Every aspect of life bent toward the effort, and still it was not enough. Here, the war was something America did with its surplus capacity, with the overflow of production that remained after citizens were fed and clothed and kept comfortable. Norfolk Air Station sprawled across 1,200 acres, a city dedicated to aircraft. The buses passed through security gates and rolled into a complex that made Anna's breath catch in her throat. Runways stretched for miles, concrete smooth as glass. Hundreds of aircraft sat in neat rows, their aluminum skins gleaming in the afternoon sun. Bombers, fighters, transports, each one representing thousands of hours of labor and tons of strategic materials. But it was when they entered Hangar B that Anna truly understood the gap between German capability and American reality. The hangar was the size of a cathedral ceiling, soaring 70 feet overhead, space enough to house a small village. And inside, stretching away in disciplined rows, 47 B-24 Liberators in various stages of assembly. Not finished aircraft waiting for deployment. Aircraft being built right here, right now, in a process so efficient it looked like choreography. The sound was overwhelming. Pneumatic hammers chattering at 180 strikes per minute, the rhythm of it almost hypnotic. Welding torches screaming as they joined metal to metal, showers of sparks cascading down like industrial fireworks. Engines being tested, the roar of them shaking the floor beneath Anna's feet. And underneath it all, the voices of workers calling to each other, sometimes laughing, as if building instruments of war was just another day's work. The smell hit next. Aviation fuel, sharp and medicinal. Hot metal, the acrid bite of it mixing with the sweet smell of cutting oil. Rubber from tires being mounted, paint fumes from final coatings. It was the smell of creation on a massive scale, the smell of a nation that could afford to waste resources because it had resources to waste. Sergeant O'Brien led them down the assembly line, his voice carrying pride without arrogance. This is just one of 12 hangars at Norfolk. Each hangar can handle up to 50 aircraft simultaneously. We complete about 3 bombers per day from this facility alone. Anna did the mathematics automatically. 3 per day times 12 hangars equals 36 aircraft daily from one base. Times 30 days equals over 1,000 bombers per month from Norfolk alone. And Hayes had mentioned this was just one of 50 facilities nationwide. Her mind reeled. The Luftwaffe was producing maybe 800 aircraft per month total all types and losing 1,200 per month to combat and accidents. Every month Germany fell further behind. Every month the gap widened. And America was building at a rate that made German production look like a hobby. O'Brien stopped beside a B-24 that was nearly complete, just a few panels away from being ready for flight. He slapped the fuselage with affection. This one right here started as raw aluminum 3 days ago. Day after tomorrow, she will be on a ship heading for England. And when not, if the Luftwaffe shoots her down, we will have another one ready to go before the wreckage cools. The women stood in silence, processing the implications. 3 days from raw material to combat-ready aircraft. Germany needed 3 months on a good run, scrounging parts, improvising solutions, pushing workers past exhaustion. Anna noticed the workers. They were not slaves being driven by whips. They were not even particularly hurried. They worked with the steady efficiency of people being paid well to do good work. People who took pride in their craft, people who knew their efforts mattered and would be rewarded. Women worked alongside men, welding and riveting and assembling with the same skill. Black workers and white workers collaborated without the rigid racial hierarchy that Nazi ideology insisted was natural and necessary. This was not the chaos of a desperate nation. This was the smooth operation of a system that had been designed by intelligent people and implemented by skilled people and supported by resources that seemed infinite. O'Brien led them to a wall where a production board tracked output. Numbers in neat columns updated daily. October production report. Week 1, 2,127 aircraft. Week 2, 2,089. Week 3, 2,156. Week 4 projected 2,200. Anna stared at the numbers, 8,500 aircraft in 1 month. Her hands began to shake. She grabbed Elizabeth's arm for support. "This is for October," she asked O'Brien, her voice barely above a whisper. 1 month, yes ma'am, nationwide total. All aircraft type, bombers, fighters, transports. We are actually a bit behind target this month. Had some supply chain issues in the Midwest, but we will make it up in November. Anna's knees gave out. She sat down hard on an equipment crate, breathing fast, feeling the walls of belief crumbling around her. 8,500 aircraft per month. Luftwaffe production was maybe 3,000 monthly, and they were losing 1,500 to combat. America was building nearly 3 times total German production and losing only a fraction to combat because they had air superiority. The mathematics were brutal, final, inescapable. Germany was not fighting a war. Germany was being erased by arithmetic. Elizabeth crouched beside her, face pale. "Anna, if these numbers are real, if they can actually sustain this level of production, then we lost before the war started. We never had a chance." Margaret stood behind them, her face carved from stone eyes distant. "I told you," she said softly. "I told you it would get worse before it got better." But Frida was not silent. She stood rigid, shaking with fury, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the hangar, loud enough to turn heads. "This is propaganda. These numbers are fabricated. They want us to believe we have lost, so we will give up hope." O'Brien walked over calmly, not threatened, just curious. "Ma'am, you think we faked 8,000 aircraft?" He gestured around the hangar. "You are looking at 47 bombers being built right here. You can see them with your own eyes. You want to count the rivets." Frida's face was red tendons standing out in her neck. "My father serves the Reich at the highest levels. He has told me about American incompetence. Their inability to coordinate, their weak will." "Your father lied to you," Margaret said, her voice cutting through Frida's tirade like a scalpel. "Or he was lied to himself. Either way, the truth is standing in front of you. You can accept it or you can die believing a comfortable lie. Your choice." For a moment, Anna thought Frida might physically attack Margaret. The SS officer's hands clenched into fists, her body coiling with violence. But then she turned and walked away, her back rigid with denial, and Anna understood that some people would rather break than bend. The tour continued, but Anna moved through it in a daze. They showed the women the pilot training facility, where Americans were being taught to fly in 6 months, what took German pilots 2 years to learn, and being taught well enough to survive against experienced Luftwaffe veterans. They showed them the maintenance depot where engines were rebuilt in hours instead of weeks. They showed them the fuel storage facility tanks holding millions of gallons of aviation gasoline, more fuel than all of Germany had in reserve. Every site was another weight on the scale. Every number was another nail in the coffin. Sergeant Mike Foster had been driving buses full of German POWs for 18 months. Mostly men combat soldiers pulled from battlefields across Europe, hard cases who glared at their captors and clung to pride because it was all they had left. But this group, 47 women, technical specialists and support staff, they were different. He watched them in the rearview mirror as he drove them back to camp. Watched the way they stared out the windows at ordinary American life, with expressions ranging from shock to grief to the kind of numb acceptance you usually saw in people who had just survived disasters. The one called Anna, the young engineer with the haunted eyes, she kept a notebook and wrote, constantly scribbling observations in German, her hand moving with the frantic energy of someone documenting a war crime. Except the crime was kindness. The crime was abundance. The crime was showing her that everything she had been taught was a lie. Foster had seen combat in North Africa. He had killed men and watched friends die and earned the right to hate the enemy with pure clarity. But these women, hungry and scared and clinging to a regime that had fed them into a meat grinder, they were not his enemies. They were just people who had been born in the wrong place and believed the wrong things and paid for it with everything they had. One of them, the older nurse, caught his eye in the mirror. She looked like she wanted to ask a question, but did not know if she was allowed. Foster made the decision. "You want to know something, ma'am? You can ask." Margaret hesitated, then said in careful English, "Why do you treat us so well? We are your enemy. We fought for Hitler. Why do you give us good food and warm beds?" Foster thought about that, watching the road unspool ahead of him, watching America pass by the windows in all its wealthy indifference to war. "Because we can afford to," he said finally. "Because we are not afraid of you. Because treating prisoners decent is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of strength." He glanced at her in the mirror. "And maybe because we hope that when this is over, you will go home and tell people the truth about us, that we are not the monsters your leaders said we were." Margaret nodded slowly. "I think," she said, "that is already happening." 2 weeks passed, 2 weeks of good food and warm beds, and the slow psychological torture of being treated humanely by people you had been taught to see as subhuman. Anna watched the camp sort itself into factions. The realists, maybe 25 women who accepted what they were seeing and began the painful process of rebuilding their understanding of the world. The neutrals, perhaps 12 women who stayed quiet and tried not to think too hard about implications. And the true believers, led by Frida, maybe 10 women who clung to Nazi ideology with the desperation of drowning people clutching debris. The tension simmered, never quite boiling over, but always present, a current running beneath every conversation. Then came November 2nd and the photographs. Captain Hayes assembled them in a briefing room, a space designed for intelligence work maps on the wall's projector screen at the front. The women filed in quietly, uncertain what to expect. Anna sat in the front row, notebook ready, still keeping her detailed observations, even though she did not know yet what she would do with them. Hayes stood at the front, his face serious. "Ladies, what I am about to show you is not meant to punish you. It is meant to help you understand the reality of this war. These are reconnaissance photographs taken by American aircraft over Germany in the past 2 months. They are real. They are current. And they tell a story that your government would prefer you not know." He dimmed the lights. The projector clicked on. The first image filled the screen. Luna Synthetic Fuel Plant, Mersburg, photographed May 1944. The image showed a massive industrial complex, cooling towers rising like monuments, pipelines snaking across acres of facilities, smokestacks breathing fire and smoke into the sky. It looked like the heart of German war production, which it was. 40% of Luftwaffe aviation fuel came from this one facility. Click, same location, October 1944. The second image showed rubble, just rubble. Twisted metal and shattered concrete and craters overlapping craters, the facility so thoroughly destroyed it looked like the surface of the moon. No smoke, no fire, just death frozen in aerial photograph form. Hayes let them absorb it. This plant no longer exists. Past tense. Without it, the Luftwaffe cannot sustain current operational tempo. You are already flying on fumes and stockpiles. Click. Schweinfurt ball bearing factory. Before and after. more images of devastation. The factory that produced the precision bearings necessary for every engine, every tank, every aircraft reduced to a skeleton of walls and dead machinery. Hayes continued methodically showing them target after target. Synthetic oil plants, railroad marshaling yards, aircraft factories, bridges, canals. Every piece of infrastructure necessary to sustain modern war, photographed before and after American bombing campaigns. The contrast so stark it was almost obscene. Anna felt herself growing numb, the images washing over her like a tide, each one eroding another piece of the foundation she had built her beliefs on. This was not propaganda. These were reconnaissance photos, technical documents, the kind of imagery she had analyzed herself during her intelligence work. She knew what real damage looked like versus faked damage. This was real. Then Hayes showed an image that made Anna's breath stop in her throat. Munich, residential district. October 19th, 1944. The neighborhood was familiar. She had grown up there. She could see the street she had walked to school, the park where she had played as a child, the intersection where her mother used to buy vegetables from a street vendor. All of it photographed from 10,000 feet. All of it partially or completely destroyed, city blocks reduced to geometric patterns of destruction. Hayes' voice was gentler now. Miss Richter, intelligence tells me this is your home district. The bombing report indicates heavy civilian casualties in this sector. I am truly sorry. Anna could not speak. She stared at the image, at the erasure of her childhood, at the death of a city that had raised her. Somewhere in that photograph, her mother might be buried, her sister. The friends she had known before the war taught them all to stop trusting friendship. Her hands began to shake. The notebook fell from her lap. Margaret reached over and gripped her hand hard enough to hurt, anchoring her to reality, keeping her from flying apart. Anna heard herself ask, "Do you know if anyone survived? Do you have casualty lists?" Hayes shook his head. "Not specific lists, no. But Red Cross has search services. We can help you file an inquiry. We will do everything we can to find out about your family." The briefing continued, but Anna heard none of it. She sat frozen, staring at the photograph of her destroyed city, thinking about Wilhelm dying in the air, and her mother possibly dying in the rubble, and herself sitting safe and warm and fed in an American camp while her world burned. When the lights came back on, Hayes spoke directly to her. "Miss Richter, I know this is hard, but I want you to understand something. We did not want to bomb Munich. We did not want to bomb any of these cities. But your government chose total war. Your leaders chose to fight until Germany was destroyed rather than surrender when defeat became inevitable. Every photograph you saw today represents a choice your leaders made." He paused, letting that sink in. "And every day this war continues, we take more photographs like these. More cities, more factories, more homes. If you can help us end this even one day earlier, you save some of those homes, you save some of those people." Anna looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you telling me this? Why show me these things? Because you are smart enough to understand what they mean. And brave enough, I hope, to do something about it." That night, Anna could not sleep. She lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, mind churning through images of destruction, through memories of family, through the impossible equation Hayes had put in front of her. Write a report, tell the truth, maybe save lives, maybe betray everything she had believed in, maybe be a traitor, maybe be the only honest person left in a nation built on lies. Around midnight, she heard movement, opened her eyes, saw a figure placing something under her door. By the time she got up to check, the figure was gone. She picked up the envelope. Inside, a letter written in German, the handwriting precise and controlled. "Fräulein Richter, do not believe what they show you. This is propaganda designed to break your will. V-2 rockets are destroying London. New weapons are coming, secret weapons that will change everything. Germany will win. You must keep faith. Watch the weak ones. Remember their names. When the Reich is restored, there will be a reckoning. Ein treuer Kamerad, a loyal comrade." Anna read it twice, felt cold spreading through her chest. Someone in the camp was still a true believer, still watching, still threatening. And they knew Anna was wavering. She burned the letter in the small stove that heated their barracks, watching the paper curl and blacken, watching the lies turn to ash. But the message remained clear. If she wrote Hayes's report, if she told the truth, she would be marked as a traitor by people who still believed. And those people, if Germany somehow won, If the miracle weapon somehow materialized, would kill her and everyone she loved. But if she stayed silent, how many more photographs would Hayes show her? How many more cities would burn while she protected herself with silence? Anna retrieved her notebook and began to write not a report yet, just thoughts trying to work through the impossible choice. The truth can kill you, she wrote, but so can lies. The question is, which death means November 15th, 1944. The Virginia morning broke cold and clear of frost, painting the barracks windows in crystalline patterns that caught the early light. Anna woke before the bugle, her mind already racing with the decision that had kept her awake most of the night. 2 weeks had passed since the photographs, 2 weeks since the anonymous letter, 2 weeks of watching Frida's faction grow more hostile while her own certainty crumbled, like the buildings in those aerial images. She dressed quietly, not wanting to wake the others, and stepped outside into air sharp enough to hurt her lungs. The guard towers stood dark against the lightning sky silhouettes of American watchfulness, and Anna found herself grateful for them in a way that would have horrified her 6 weeks ago. They represented order, safety, a world where the rules were clear and followed. Captain Hayes had requested to see her this morning. She knew what he would ask, the same thing he had been asking with infinite patience for 2 weeks. Have you decided, will you write the report? Anna walked toward the administration building, boots crunching on frost-covered ground, her breath fogging in the cold. She had her answer now. She had worked through the mathematics of conscience the same way she worked through engineering problems, breaking it down into components, analyzing each piece, arriving at the only logical conclusion. But logic and courage were not the same thing. Hayes was waiting in his small office, coffee already brewing, the smell of it mixing with wood smoke from the stove. He gestured to a chair and poured her a cup without asking, the kind of casual hospitality that still caught her off guard. In Germany, officers did not serve subordinates. They certainly did not serve prisoners. Miss Richter. He sat across from her, his face tired in the morning light. She realized he had not been sleeping well either. Have you had time to consider my proposal? Anna wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, seeking warmth, seeking time. Captain Hayes, if I write this report, if I tell the truth about what I have seen, what guarantee do I have that it will actually help, that anyone will listen? No guarantee. Hayes did not sugarcoat it. Some German officers will dismiss it as propaganda. Some will file it away and forget it. But intelligence suggests there are generals who are looking for a reason to stop fighting. Men who see the same mathematics you see, but need political cover to act. Your report from a loyal German officer gives them that cover. And if it does not work, if the war continues and someone discovers, I wrote it, then you will have tried. That is all any of us can do. Hayes leaned forward slightly. Miss Richter, I cannot promise you safety. I cannot promise you success. What I can promise is that every word you write will be the truth, and truth has a power that lies can never match. Even if only one general reads your report and decides to surrender his sector one day earlier. How many lives is that worth? Anna thought of Wilhelm dead in the sky over France, thought of her mother and Liesel starving in Bavaria, thought of the children she had seen through the bus window, German children with hollow eyes and swollen bellies paying the price for their leaders' delusions. I will write it, she said quietly, but I need help. I need someone to verify my technical observations. Someone who can confirm I am not exaggerating or making mistakes in translation. Hayes nodded. I can arrange that. Miss Weber has been working with our communications team. She can review the technical sections. He paused. Miss Richter, what changed your mind? Anna met his eyes. The photographs of Munich. My city destroyed, and I realize that silence is also a choice. If I say nothing and the war continues and more cities burn, I am complicit in that. At least if I speak and fail, I will have tried. That is all we can ask. Hayes stood, extending his hand. Thank you for your courage. Anna shook his hand, feeling the weight of the decision settle onto her shoulders like a physical thing. She had crossed a line. There was no going back now. The next week passed in a blur of writing and revision. Hayes provided Anna with a private room, a desk, unlimited paper, and access to Elizabeth for technical verification. The two women worked long hours, Anna drafting in German, while Elizabeth checked calculations and confirmed production numbers from her own observations. The report grew slowly, painfully, each sentence a small act of betrayal against everything Anna had been raised to believe, each paragraph a step away from the person she had been and towards someone she did not yet know how to be. She began with the shipyards describing Norfolk in clinical detail. The number of vessels under construction, the speed of production, the capacity of American industry measured in tonnage and time. She included calculations showing how U-boat attrition could never match Liberty ship construction, how the Battle of the Atlantic was already lost even if U-boats sank twice their current numbers. From there, she moved to aircraft production, the horrifying efficiency of American assembly lines. The training programs producing pilots faster than combat could kill them. The fuel reserves that made German shortages look like a child's piggy bank compared to a national treasury. She included the production board numbers from Norfolk documented with precision that no one could dismiss as propaganda. Then she addressed something harder: the treatment of prisoners, the abundance of food, the medical care, the dignity. She wrote about this not to praise America, but to indict Germany, to show what a nation looked like when it valued human life, when it had enough resources to be kind, when strength meant something other than cruelty. In the Reich, we are told that kindness is weakness, she wrote, that only hard men can win hard wars. But I have seen American kindness, and it is not weak. It is the kindness of a nation so strong it does not need to be cruel. It is the kindness of people so confident in victory, they can afford to treat their enemies as human beings. This is a strength we have not understood, and our failure to understand it has cost us everything. The hardest section came last: her personal conclusion, the recommendation that would mark her as a traitor if anyone ever connected the report to her name. As a German officer, as an engineer, as someone who has seen American capacity with my own eyes, I must speak the truth that our leaders will not. We have lost this war. Not in the future, not potentially. We have already lost. The mathematics are final. The only question remaining is how many more Germans will die before we accept reality. I beg those with power to make decisions. Surrender while there is still a Germany left to save. End this war before we are utterly destroyed. This is not defeatism. This is the only patriotism that matters now. The patriotism of preserving our people rather than sacrificing them for a lost cause. She signed it simply, a German technical officer, November 1944. When the report was finished, 23 pages of dense technical analysis and painful truth, Anna sat back and stared at it for a long time. This document could save lives. It could also get her killed. Both things could be true simultaneously. Elizabeth read the final version, her face growing more serious with each page. When she finished, she looked up at Anna with something like awe. This is going to make people very angry. Good, Anna said. They should be angry at the people who lied to us, at the leaders who knew the truth and sent us to die anyway. She paused. Will you sign it too? As a co-author, Elizabeth shook her head slowly. I agree with every word, but I have parents still alive in Hamburg. If this gets traced back, I cannot risk them. You understand, Anna understood. She had made her choice knowing the cost. She could not ask others to pay the same price. I understand. Thank you for helping verify the numbers. That is enough. She delivered the report to Hayes the next morning. He read it in silence, his face unreadable, occasionally making notes in the margins. When he finished, he looked up at Anna with something that might have been respect. This is extraordinary work, Miss Richter. Detailed, honest, devastating. He tapped the cover page. We will translate this immediately. Get it into channels within a week. If there are German officers willing to listen, this will reach them. Will I ever know if it worked? Probably not. Intelligence is like that. You throw stones into a pond and hope for ripples, but rarely see them yourself. Hayes paused. But I can tell you this. There are people in Washington who believe we can shorten this war by sharing information like this with reasonable Germans. Your report will be taken seriously at the highest levels. Anna nodded, feeling empty and full, simultaneously terrified and calm. It is done then. Not quite. Hayes opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. This arrived through Red Cross yesterday. About your family. Anna's hands shook as she took the envelope. She tore it open, vision blurring, scanning the German text for the only words that mattered. Your mother, Frau Maria Richter, and sister Liesel Richter have been located in the village of Garmisch, Bavaria. Both alive. Both in poor health due to malnutrition and exposure. Conditions in the village are severe. Red Cross is attempting to arrange aid packages, but distribution is difficult due to ongoing military operations. Anna read it 3 times, hands trembling, tears streaming down her face. They were alive. hungry, sick, suffering but alive. She pressed the letter to her chest and sobbed with relief so profound it hurt. Hayes waited until she could breathe again. Your report might help end the war before winter gets worse, before your mother and sister run out of time. That is worth something, yes. Yes, Anna whispered. Yes, it is worth everything. The confrontation came 5 nights later at 11 in the evening when most of the camp slept. Anna was alone in her room writing in her diary by lamplight when her door crashed open. Frida stood there, face flushed with fury, holding several sheets of paper. Behind her, Clara and 2 other true believers blocked the exit. You wrote it, Frida hissed, stepping into the room. You wrote a report for the Americans, betraying everything. Betraying the Reich. Anna stood slowly, mind racing. How did Frida know the report was supposed to be secret, her identity protected? Someone had talked. Someone had betrayed the betrayer. I wrote the truth, Anna said carefully. Nothing more. The truth. Frida's voice rose to a shriek. You wrote propaganda for our enemies. You told them we have lost. You gave them intelligence about our capabilities. You are a traitor, and when the war ends, you will hang for this. The war is over, Frida. We have lost. The only question is how many more people die before fanatics like you accept it. Frida moved fast, crossing the room in 3 strides, her hands swinging toward Anna's face. The slap connected with a crack that echoed off the walls, snapping Anna's head sideways as filling her mouth with the copper taste of blood. Anna stumbled back, vision starred with pain, and for a moment pure instinct took over. She shoved Frida hard, sending the other woman crashing into the desk. Papers scattered. The lamp rocked dangerously. You think you can save Germany by telling the truth to our enemies? Frida scrambled up, fists clenched. You are a fool, a coward. Your brother would be ashamed of you. Do not speak about Wilhelm. Anna's voice cracked like a whip. He died because people like you lied to people like him. He died believing in victory that was never possible, and you would have let him die for nothing rather than admit you were wrong. They crashed together, 2 women fighting not just each other, but everything they represented. Frida fought with the desperate fury of someone defending a collapsing worldview. Anna fought with the cold rage of someone who had seen too much truth to go back to comfortable lies. They fell to the floor, grappling, knocking over the chair, sending the desk lamp crashing. The noise brought guards running. Flashlight beams swept into the room. American voices shouted for them to stop. Strong hands pulled them apart. Frida was still screaming, spitting curses in German, struggling against the guards holding her. She is a traitor. She wrote for the enemy. You should execute her. The guard holding Frida was Sergeant Foster. He looked at the scattered papers, at Anna's bleeding lip, at the fury radiating from both women. Ma'am, he said to Frida, calm and firm, we do not execute anyone here. That is the difference between us and you. Frida spat at him. Missed, struggled harder. Foster sighed. Take her to isolation, he told the other guards. 24-hour watch, and someone get Captain Hayes. Anna sat on her bunk, holding a cloth to her split lip, watching them drag Frida away. The SS officer's screams echoed down the hallway, German threats mixing with English curses, the sound of someone whose world had ended but refused to accept it. Margaret appeared in the doorway, Elizabeth behind her. They took in the wrecked room. Anna's bloody face and understood immediately. She found out about the report, Margaret said. It was not a question. Anna nodded. Someone told her. Someone who had access to privileged information. A guard, maybe. Or another prisoner working with administration. Or someone who wanted this confrontation to happen, Elizabeth said quietly. Someone who needed to know where everyone stood. They sat with Anna until Hayes arrived 20 minutes later. He surveyed the damage with a practiced eye, then dismissed the guards and closed the door. Are you hurt? Anything broken? Just my lip, Anna said. It may be my last illusion that I could write that report without consequences. Hayes sat heavily in the overturned chair. Hoffman got her information from a guard we have been monitoring. He was feeding her selected intelligence, seeing what she would do with it. We needed to know if there were active Nazi sympathizers planning something more than just refusing to cooperate. Now we know. You used me as bait, Anna said flatly. I gave you a choice knowing Hoffman might find out. Yes. Hayes met her eyes without flinching. I am sorry it came to this, but we needed to force the issue, and you needed protection whether you knew it or not. Hoffman and her faction were planning something. Now they are isolated and we can deal with them properly. Anna touched her swelling lip, tasted blood, and found herself too tired to be angry. Will my report still go through? Or has this compromised it? Your report is already in channels. Translated encrypted on its way to Switzerland, where it will be delivered to German contacts. Nothing Hoffman does can stop that now. Hayes paused. And Miss Richter, that letter you burned 2 weeks ago, the anonymous one threatening you, that was from Hoffman. We know because we intercepted 2 others like it before they could be delivered. So she has been threatening people all along. Yes, trying to keep the true believers together, trying to stop anyone from accepting reality. Hayes stood. She will be held in isolation until the war ends, then transferred to denazification processing. She will not trouble you again. After he left, Margaret helped Anna clean up the room, picking up scattered papers, writing the furniture. Elizabeth made tea on the small electric hot plate they had been issued, another impossible luxury in a camp full of them. They sat together in the lamplight, drinking tea, saying nothing, just being present for each other, in the way that women who have survived impossible things learn to be present. Finally, Margaret spoke. You did the right thing. Writing that report. Telling the truth. No matter what happens, you did the right thing. Then why does it feel like I betrayed everything? Anna's voice was small. Because you were taught that loyalty means never questioning, never doubting, never admitting error. But real loyalty, loyalty to people instead of ideas, that means telling the truth even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Elizabeth set down her tea. My father was a professor of philosophy before the Nazis purged the universities. He told me once that the opposite of a lie is not always truth. Sometimes it is silence. And silence can be just as deadly. Anna thought about that, thought about all the Germans who had seen the truth and said nothing, who had known the war was lost but kept fighting because speaking up was too dangerous, who had let cities burn and soldiers die rather than risk the accusation of defeatism. She had broken that silence. She had written the truth even knowing it might kill her. That was worth something, even if she never knew whether it actually saved lives. The 3 women finished their tea as midnight approached. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Investigation into the security breach, testimony about the fight, formal separation of the camp into factions for everyone's safety. But tonight they had each other, 3 women who had traveled from belief to doubt to terrible clarity, who had survived the crossing and found themselves in a new country even though they had never left Virginia. Anna wrote one final entry in her diary before sleep. November 20th, 1944. Today I fought someone who used to be my countrywoman. Today I bled for telling the truth. Today I learned that the hardest battles are not against enemies across borders, but against the lies inside our own minds. I do not know if my report will matter. I do not know if anyone will listen. But I know I tried, and trying even in failure is better than the silence of cowardice. Wilhelm died believing in lies. I will live telling the truth. That is the only way to honor his sacrifice now, to make sure his death means something by ensuring it is not repeated. December passed into January. Winter settled over Virginia, cold, but nothing like the brutal freeze gripping Europe. Anna waited for news that never came. Hayes had warned her that intelligence work meant throwing stones into darkness, rarely hearing the splash. But waiting was harder than she had imagined. The camp had reorganized itself. Frida and her core believers, 10 women total, were housed separately under constant watch. The neutrals, uncomfortable with both extremes, kept to themselves. And the realists, Anna's faction, began the slow work of rebuilding their understanding of themselves and the world. Red Cross packages arrived irregularly. Anna sent everything she could spare to her mother and sister. Chocolate, soap, wool socks, small things that might mean survival. The letters that came back were brief, censored but alive. Her mother's handwriting, shaky but present. Liesel's cramped script speaking of hunger and cold and hope that the war would end soon. January brought news of the Battle of the Bulge, Germany's last desperate offensive, and Anna listened to the radio reports with her heart in her throat. For 3 days, it seemed like maybe impossibly, Germany might break through. For 3 days, the true believers celebrated and the realists despaired. Then American production tilted the scales. Reinforcements arrived faster than Germany could exploit gains. Fuel ran out. The offensive collapsed. And Anna understood that her report had been right. Germany could win battles through will and sacrifice, but America won wars through resources and mathematics. On February 13th, word came of Dresden, the firebombing that turned a Baroque city into an inferno. Anna sat in the common room listening to the BBC broadcast, hearing the casualty estimates, seeing in her mind the photographs Hayes would eventually show them. More devastation, more proof that German leadership had chosen total war and gotten it, but also more urgency. Every day the war continued, more cities burned, more soldiers died, more civilians starved. Her report, if anyone read it, if anyone believed it, if anyone had the courage to act on it, might have saved some of them. Or it might be sitting in a file somewhere, ignored, irrelevant. She would never know. March brought Soviet advances from the East and American advances from the West. The radio broadcast made clear what anyone with eyes could see, but from which Germany was being crushed between two unstoppable forces. The only question was how long the dying would take. Then in April, two pieces of news arrived within days of each other. First, Roosevelt died. For a moment, a brief shining moment, the true believers thought this might change everything. Surely America would lose heart. Surely the alliance would fracture. Surely Germany would get a reprieve. But Truman took office and nothing changed. The bombing continued. The advance continued. The arithmetic of defeat ground forward with mechanical inevitability. Second, on April 16th, Soviet forces reached Berlin. The news came through military channels before it hit civilian broadcasts. Hayes brought it to Anna personally. "It is almost over," he said quietly. "Days now, maybe weeks, not months." And my report, did it matter? Hayes pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This came through secure channels yesterday. I debated whether to show you, but I think you have earned the right to know." Inside was a single page typed in German, no signature. The technical assessment, provided by German officer November 1944, was received and reviewed by operational staff January 1945. Information corroborated independent intelligence. Several sector commanders cited the report when making decisions to surrender forces rather than conduct pointless defensive operations that would have resulted in civilian casualties. Specific examples include the decision not to destroy bridges in Munich, decision not to conduct house-to-house fighting in certain Bavaria towns, decision to evacuate hospitals before final collapse. Impossible to quantify lives saved, but assessment contributed to rational decision-making at critical moments. Officer who compiled the report is credited with saving unknown but significant number of German lives. Identity will be protected as promised. Anna read it 3 times, hands shaking, tears blurring the words. Her report had mattered. Not everywhere, not conclusively, but it had reached people who made decisions, and some of those decisions had saved lives. German lives. Her people, even if they would never know who had helped them. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me this." "You earned it," Hayes said. "You risked everything for truth. The least I could do was let you know it was not in vain." That night, Anna burned the letter as she had burned the threatening note months earlier. But this time she burned it with gratitude, watching the paper curl and blacken, watching evidence of her small victory turn to ash because some things were more important than proof. Some things you had to carry in your heart, not your hands. On May 7th, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over. The camp gathered in the common room to hear the broadcast. 47 women who had started this journey as true believers and ended it scattered across the spectrum of understanding. Some wept with relief, some sat in stunned silence. Some Frida's faction refused to listen, insisted it was propaganda, clung to denial, like drowning people to debris. Anna sat between Margaret and Elizabeth, the 3 of them holding hands, and let herself feel the full weight of it. Relief that it was over. Grief for everything lost. Uncertainty about what came next. And underneath it all, a small, quiet pride that she had done something, however small, to make the ending less terrible. "S is for bye," Margareta whispered. "It is over." "Yes," Anna said. "Now comes the harder part. Going home, facing what we helped create, building something better from the ruins." "If they let us," Elizabeth said quietly. They sat in silence as the broadcast continued, as the world learned that the Third Reich, promised to last 1,000 years, had collapsed in 12. As American soldiers celebrated and German prisoners tried to process what it meant to have lost everything and survived anyway. Anna thought about Wilhelm, dead for 11 months now, never knowing how it would end. Thought about her mother and Liesel waiting in Bavaria for a daughter and sister who had become someone they would not recognize. Thought about the report she had written and the lives it might have saved and the price she had paid to tell the truth. The war was over, but her war, the war between who she had been and who she had become, was just beginning. And she would face it the only way she knew how, with truth, with courage borrowed from desperate moments. With the understanding that silence was complicity and speaking was survival, she pulled out her diary and wrote one final entry from captivity. May 7, 1945. The war is over. Germany has lost. I am still alive. These three facts seem impossible together, but they are all true. Tomorrow we begin repatriation processing. Soon I will go home to a country I do not recognize, to face people who may call me traitor for telling truth. But I will go with my head high, because I know what I did. I wrote the truth when lies were easier. I chose conscience over comfort. And whatever comes next, I will face it knowing I tried to save lives instead of sacrificing them to false pride. Wilhelm, if you can hear me, wherever pilots go, when they fall from the sky, know that I honored you the only way I could, not by continuing your fight, but by ending it, not by dying for the lie, but by living for the truth. Forgive me if you can, I could not save you, but perhaps I saved someone else's brother. That will have to be enough.